Break up with Daniel and marry a man in a wheelchair. That was my parents' solution to our money problems. No hesitation, no guilt, just a 500, zero promise from the Bennett family if I agreed to marry their paralyzed son, Lucas. I was 24, in love, building a life with Daniel, my boyfriend of 4 years. But overnight, my future was ripped apart. My parents said it was my duty. That love doesn't pay the bills, but 500K does. So, I walked down the aisle toward a stranger who couldn't walk beside me, only to realize, 1 year later, that nothing about him was what it seemed. What I discovered didn't just shatter everything I'd been told, it shattered me. And maybe, it also saved me. I grew up in a small conservative town in upstate New York, one of those places where gossip spread faster than sunlight and family reputation meant more than actual happiness. My parents, Carol and Mitchell Carson, had always carried a chip on their shoulder. We weren't wealthy, far from it. My dad worked at a car parts warehouse, my mom picked up shifts at a diner. But they walked around like royalty fallen from grace. According to them, I was their second chance, the one who would elevate our name again. They didn't say it with pride, they said it with pressure. So, when Mr. Bennett, a former business partner of Dad's, reached out about arranging a marriage between me and his only son, Lucas, my parents didn't hesitate. Not because they thought I'd be happy, but because the Bennetts had money, a lot of it. And Lucas, paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident, wasn't exactly drawing a line of eager women. But here's the part that still haunts me. They didn't ask me. They told me. "We've sacrificed everything for you, Emily," my mom said, her voice clipped. "This is your turn to give back." I wanted to scream. I already had a life. I'd been dating Daniel since college, 4 years of real love. We were saving for a tiny apartment in Boston. We had a list of baby names. We fought over coffee mugs. He knew how I liked my grilled cheese. Crispy edges, sharp cheddar, no crust. Lucas Bennett? I didn't even know what his voice sounded like. When I told my parents no, my dad punched the table so hard the silverware rattled. "I'm not letting you throw away $500,000 over some college fling," he barked. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. A chance to sell me off." That's what it was. They spun it as honor, as responsibility, as doing what's right for the family. But all I heard was control. Still, something in me froze. Maybe it was fear, maybe I was tired of fighting, or maybe I was too broken from years of carrying the family on my back. Whatever it was, the next day, I said yes. Daniel never looked at me the same again. I met Daniel under a library skylight during sophomore year. He was leaning over a copy of Moby Dick, arguing with the air about how Captain Ahab was the real villain. I laughed. He looked up and said, "You agree or disagree?" We'd been inseparable ever since. So when I told him, face pale, hands shaking, that I was ending things, his smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. "You're joking," he said, like he needed me to be. "I'm not," I whispered. "My parents, they need help. I don't have a choice." Daniel stood in stunned silence, then laughed bitterly. "Emily, we make choices every single day. You just chose them over me." I didn't defend myself. I couldn't. Because he was right. He begged me to fight it or run, to elope, to disappear, but my heart was already too heavy. The guilt of carrying my parents' disappointment for years, it had worn me down like river rock. I couldn't fight anymore. Not even for the man I loved. He held my face in his hands one last time and asked, "Do you love him?" I said nothing. That silence was my betrayal. The following days passed like static. My mom booked the courthouse. My dad invited the Bennetts over for dinner as if we were negotiating a business deal. Lucas didn't say much. He sat in his wheelchair, eyes downcast, responding politely when spoken to. I remember wondering if he hated this arrangement too, or if he was just used to people deciding things for him. There was no rehearsal, no celebration. Just a plain white dress my mother borrowed from a friend, and a pair of shoes that didn't quite fit. I didn't cry on the day of the wedding. Not because I wasn't sad, but because I was numb. The courthouse smelled like lemon disinfectant and worn-out paper. The justice of the peace barely looked at us as we said our I do's. Lucas didn't smile. Neither did I. My parents, on the other hand, were glowing. My dad shook hands with Mr. Bennett like they'd just sealed a merger. And me? I walked out of that building feeling like I had just buried myself alive. That night, I slept on the living room couch of Lucas's apartment. He didn't say a word to me when we got home. He simply wheeled himself to the back bedroom, closed the door, and didn't come out again. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was deliberate, thick with unsaid truths and unchosen paths. In the darkness, I clutched a photo of Daniel I hadn't had the heart to delete. And for the first time since saying goodbye, I cried. The apartment Lucas and I moved into wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It had everything you'd expect: beige carpet, a tiny kitchen, a squeaky hallway light, but it lacked soul. No photos, no music, no scent of life, just two strangers occupying space. Lucas had a routine. He woke early, made his own breakfast, and vanished into the back room until dinner. No TV, no small talk, no intrusion. I, on the other hand, filled the silence with movement. I scrubbed spotless countertops, rearranged books I never read, took long walks to nowhere. Sometimes, I'd just stand by the window, wondering what Daniel was doing at that exact moment. Did he still keep my hoodie? Did he still love me? Lucas rarely spoke, but when he did, his words were clipped, efficient, like he was trying not to waste breath. Groceries are on the table. I took out the trash. I'm not expecting guests. No malice, no warmth. We didn't eat together. He preferred to eat alone in his room. I didn't press. We lived like roommates bound by contract, not by choice. But I noticed things, like the way his eyes would linger on the stars when the news was on mute, or how he stacked his books by theme: astronomy, philosophy, quantum computing. Or how his hands, though calloused, moved with delicate precision when he rolled his wheelchair over the wooden floor, careful not to make a sound. One evening, I was sick with a stomach bug. I didn't have the strength to move. To my surprise, Lucas appeared with a glass of water and a bowl of plain rice. I figured it'd be easier to digest, he said quietly, placing it beside me. It was the first time he'd looked me in the eye. That night, he stayed in the hallway, just outside my room, reading under a desk lamp until I fell asleep. He didn't say why, he just stayed. After that, our silence changed. It softened. One evening, while putting away laundry, I found a sheet of graph paper tucked inside one of his astronomy books. It wasn't a stargazing chart, it was code. Complex algorithms, handwritten. Lines of logic I couldn't decipher. I paused, curious. Lucas didn't look like a hacker or a scientist, but the code said otherwise. I didn't ask. Not then. I just folded the paper and put it back. That same night, as I was microwaving leftover soup, I asked him if he'd ever been in love. He didn't answer right away. Once, he finally said. It didn't end well. His voice was steadier than I expected. I nodded, not pushing further. We didn't suddenly become friends, but the walls between us? They shifted, just slightly. Enough for words to sneak through. In the quiet that followed, I didn't feel so alone anymore. And in a house still divided, something had begun to bloom. Something in our house had changed. It wasn't dramatic, not like in movies, where a grand gesture turns everything around. It was quieter than that. Slower. A shift, not a snap. Lucas began asking me questions, not many, but they caught me off guard. Why did you study psychology? What's your favorite constellation? Do you believe in parallel lives? I answered cautiously at first, waiting for judgment, but none came. Only more questions. One Sunday afternoon, I came home from the grocery store to find Lucas in the living room, absorbed in a thick textbook titled Artificial Consciousness and Neural Simulation. His brows furrowed, a pencil dancing between his fingers. You read that for fun? I asked. He didn't look up. I build systems, I need to understand thought before I can mimic it. That was the first time I heard what he did. Not his job, but his obsession. Lucas wasn't just smart, he was brilliant. Behind the silence was a mind that pulsed like electricity. Later that week, I peeked into the back room when his door was slightly ajar. Inside was a setup that didn't belong in a modest apartment. 3 monitors, a mini server rack, notebooks filled with diagrams and equations, and on the wall star charts. He caught me watching. I braced for anger. But he only said, "Curious?" "A little." He paused, then gestured to a chair. And just like that, he began to explain. Lucas spoke of artificial intelligence like it was art. His voice grew faster, more alive, as he walked me through the idea of building machines that could mimic intuition, not just logic. I didn't understand most of it, but I saw him. Not the quiet, bitter man from my wedding day, but a passionate, builder-driven, meticulous, quietly ambitious. From then on, he let me sit with him sometimes. He never treated me like I was dumb. When I asked questions, he answered patiently, sketching out diagrams or metaphors I could grasp. One night, he said, "You're the first person who's ever sat through my explanation without yawning." I smiled. "I've lived with people who talk at me. You talk to me, it's new." He stared for a long moment, like he was trying to decide whether or not to say what he was thinking. Then he said, "You deserve better than what your parents gave you." Those words cracked something open inside me. Not because they were romantic, but because they were true. After that, things between us softened. We started eating dinner at the same table. He made sarcastic jokes under his breath, and I laughed in spite of myself. I started cooking real meals again, and he never complained when they turned out a little burnt. Sometimes, at night, I'd find him on the balcony, his wheelchair turned toward the sky, whispering constellations to the stars like old friends. I'd stand silently in the doorway watching, wondering. Because by then, I didn't see Lucas the paraplegic anymore. I saw Lucas, the man. And I wasn't sure when that shift had happened. It happened on a Tuesday night. Rain drummed against the windows like war drums, and the wind howled as if it knew something I didn't. Lucas said he was heading out for a short drive. He did that sometimes, just to get air. I nodded from the couch, half asleep, a book in my lap. The apartment door clicked shut, and I heard the elevator descend. Something nudged me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was a strange tightness in my chest. But 5 minutes later, I grabbed my raincoat and keys and followed him. I didn't know what I was looking for. Until I found it. The building's underground garage was mostly empty, just a few sedans lined against the far wall. I saw Lucas's car parked in its usual spot. Then I saw him. Standing. No wheelchair, no limp, no braces. Just him. Upright. Balanced. Whole. My breath caught midair. My skin prickled. I stepped back behind a pillar, heart pounding so loud I was sure it would echo off the concrete. Lucas opened the trunk, retrieved something a small toolkit and closed it with practiced ease. His body moved with muscle memory. This wasn't recovery. This wasn't a miracle. This was a secret. I didn't confront him that night. I walked home soaked in silence, my mind a knot of betrayal, confusion, and something else I couldn't name. Awe? Fear? Relief? I barely slept. The next morning, I waited in the kitchen, heart racing as he wheeled back in like nothing had happened. He glanced at me, raised an eyebrow. "You're quiet," he said. "Were you always paralyzed?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He froze. Seconds passed. Then, he sighed. And for the first time, he didn't look away. "No," he said. Silence. "Why?" I whispered. He wheeled forward slowly, then stopped in front of me. "Because the truth never got me anywhere. But pity opened doors. Gave me silence. Gave me time." I stared at him, shaking. "You faked everything? Even the chair?" "No," he said. "Not everything. The accident was real. I couldn't walk for almost a year. But I healed, quietly. And when I did, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want my family to drag me back into their world of expectations, so I stayed in the chair, let them think I was broken. My stomach turned. But why marry me? Why let me believe? He interrupted. I didn't want to. They told me you wanted the money, that you agreed, that we were doing each other a favor. I flinched. I never wanted money. I wanted out. His jaw tightened. Me too. The truth hung between us like smoke thick, impossible to unsee. I stepped back, tears stinging. You should have told me. He nodded. I know. And now? He stood. Right there, in our kitchen, slowly rising like a man reclaiming his shadow, and I watching didn't feel betrayed. I felt unmoored. Because the man in front of me was not weak. He never was. And suddenly, neither was I. I turned, walked to the window, trying to breathe. The rain had stopped, only the echo of it remained. Behind me, Lucas's voice came softer than I'd ever heard it. I didn't fake it to fool you. I did it to survive. But I should have trusted you. You deserved that. I didn't reply. I needed space. Time. Truth. But I also knew deep in my bones that this wasn't the end of us. This was our beginning. I didn't go home that night. I drove for hours instead past empty diners, shuttered storefronts, the old high school parking lot where Daniel once kissed my forehead before finals. But I didn't cry. I was past crying. What I needed now was answers. So the next morning, I drove to my parents' house. Mom answered the door in her usual robe and slippers, coffee in hand, like it was just another day. Emily, she said, surprised. What are you? Did Lucas's family ever pay you? She blinked. The silence that followed told me everything. I stepped inside, ignoring her fumbled excuse. Dad was at the table, pretending to read the newspaper, something he only did when trying to appear unbothered. I want the truth, I said, loud enough for both of them. Did you lie to me? Mom's mouth twisted. It wasn't a liet, was an opportunity. Answer me, I snapped. Did they ever give you the 500? Dad finally looked up, his face flushed. No, but they said, I cut him off, because you never confirmed, you just assumed. And you used me as your bargaining chip. Mom slammed her mug down. Don't talk like that in this house. This house? I laughed bitterly. You mean the house you tried to keep afloat by selling your daughter into a transaction that didn't even exist? You were drifting, Dad barked, dating some broke kid with no direction. We gave you a way out. No, I said, shaking. You gave yourselves a fantasy, and dragged me through it. I looked around the kitchen, the cheap wallpaper, the familiar smell of burnt toast stand. I saw it differently now, not as home, but as evidence of every guilt trip, every manipulation. Every time I was told to be a good daughter at the expense of my own voice. You didn't save me, I said, voice low. You traded me, for nothing. Mom's face crumbled. We just wanted security. I wanted freedom, I said. And I finally have it, not because of you, in spite of you. Dad's jaw tightened. So what now? You think you're better than us? No, I whispered. Just freer. I walked out before they could answer. Outside, the air felt lighter. My hands still trembled, but there was clarity in the shaking. I'd always blamed Lucas. Always looked at him as the stranger forced into my life. But the real strangers had always been my parents. That night, I returned to the apartment. Lucas was on the balcony, standing, arms resting on the railing, staring out at the stars like they were old confidants. He didn't turn when I slid the door open. I confronted them, I said. He nodded. They never got the money. He was quiet for a moment. I figured. I stepped beside him. We stood there for a long time, saying nothing, needing nothing. Just two people who had been used, lied to, reshaped by expectation, and somehow survived. I'm not here because I have to be, I said softly. I'm here because I choose to be. Lucas turned to me. then maybe that's where our story really begins. After the confrontation with my parents, it felt like a dam inside me had burst. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving someone else's story. I was finally writing my own. I quit the part-time job my mother had begged me to keep, just in case. I enrolled in an online graduate program in behavioral neuroscience, something I'd always been fascinated by, but never dared to pursue. Lucas, surprisingly, helped me study. Memory and pattern recognition, he said, one night as I wrestled with a concept. It's not that different from machine learning. Human brains just run messier code. We shared more than we ever had before. Breakfast became a shared ritual. Dinner turned into late-night conversations about the mind, the universe, the strange weight of regret. One evening, while rewatching an old documentary, I turned to him and asked, "Do you ever think about what it would have been like if we met under different circumstances?" Lucas paused. "I think we wouldn't have seen each other." "What do you mean?" "You would have seen me as another brilliant tech guy, and I would have seen you as just someone passing through. But because we were both broken when we met, we looked harder. We listened." I let that settle. He was right. Pain had stripped us down to something honest. I started building a life beyond the apartment. I presented my first paper at a small academic conference nervous and shaking, but when I looked up halfway through, Lucas was there, quietly sitting in the back row, arms crossed, watching me like I was the only person in the room. Afterward, he didn't say much, just handed me a sticky note with the words, "You belong here." It meant more than any applause. That night, back home, I found him reorganizing his servers. He looked up and asked, "Would you ever want to work together? Build something?" I blinked. "Like a startup?" He nodded. "Something real. You understand people. I understand machines. That could be powerful." I laughed. "From fake marriage to business partners?" He smirked. "Only if you're ready to trust a man who fakes needing a wheelchair." I looked at him standing there in his quiet brilliance, his vulnerability, his strange resilience, and realized I already did. We didn't talk about love or not yet, but it was there, like a thread running quietly beneath our days. One morning, I passed our old wedding photo on the shelf, him sitting stiffly in his chair, me looking hollow and numb. I reached for it and turned it face down. Because the people in that picture? They were strangers. Who we were, now who we were becoming, was something else entirely. We didn't throw a second wedding. No flowers, no vows, no matching rings. Just a quiet morning, 2 mugs of coffee, and a shared glance that said, "This is real now. We're real now." Love didn't come to us in fireworks. It came in fragments. In the way Lucas remembered how I liked my eggs. In the way I knew which nights he needed silence more than company. He never asked for forgiveness for the lie, because we both knew this story was never just about that one moment. It was about how life had broken both of us, in different ways, and somehow, we chose to build something new from the shards. Lucas walked more now. Not often, not for show, only when it mattered. One night, as I stood on the balcony watching the stars, I heard the sound of soft footsteps behind me. I turned and there he was, walking toward me, hand outstretched. No performance, no spectacle, just a man, choosing me. And I, choosing him. We started a company together quietly, without investors or launch parties. A neuroadaptive AI platform built around empathy and behavior modeling. It wasn't just code. It was everything we had learned the hard way, that understanding someone meant more than just reacting to what they say. It meant seeing what they hide. It grew slowly, then all at once. Within a year, we had real traction, the kind that made people pay attention, the kind that made headlines. One day, a tech reporter asked me how we met. I smiled and said, "Through a mistake, the best mistake of my life." I never returned to my parents' house. They reached out when they saw our names in Forbes. I didn't answer. Not because I hated them, but because I had finally stopped living in the space between their expectations and my own voice. Some stories don't need a dramatic revenge arc. Some stories need closure in the form of distance. Lucas and I didn't call each other soulmates. That word felt too neat. What we had was something messier, braver. Two people, once lied to, once used, who found something real in the wreckage. Some nights, I still sit by the window and remember that version of me who cried on a couch the night of her wedding, convinced she had no choice, no future, no agency. I wish I could reach back and tell her, just wait, because someday, that man you were forced to marry, he'll stand up, and when he does so will you.